It's the Newport This Week video podcast series. Every week you'll find all kinds of content at newportthisweek.com, of course, also on the Newport This Week YouTube channel. I'm Bill Bartholomew, and today we're having a discussion that really it's been something that's been ongoing for a couple of years now, and some school districts have already implemented this, and that's banning cell phones in schools. And interestingly enough, yesterday there was a poll released by Organized Labor. Among the questions in that poll was whether or not schools ought to ban cell phones. 52% of respondents said that cell phones ought to be banned. The Middletown School Committee, in a headline in this week's edition of the Newport This Week newspaper, Middletown School Committee divided over cell phone policy. And it's an interesting conversation because at the end of the day, there's no doubt about it that cell phones are essential, and being able to use them and being able to use technology is essential to where we're going, being able to use intelligence. At the same time, cell phones can be distracting and they can be addictive. I guess, Greg, if you want to introduce yourself and sort of set the table from your standpoint on this issue.
I'm on a school committee. This is going into my third year. Um, my background, I'm a retired naval officer, spent 27 years on active duty. I have two kids who graduated from Middletown High School. My third one did not. My kids are all older in their 30s and don't live in the area anymore. Um, so I've lived all over the country, experienced school districts all over the country. And so I probably bring a little bit different perspective to the school committee than what has been there in the past.
You're also the chair of the school committee, so I think that's of significant note as well. And the policy that was introduced passed unanimously, but with conditions. What's your overall take on whether or not Middletown specifically should ban cell phone use by students in schools?
So when you look at the medical literature, it's overwhelming that cell phones in schools and social media and screen time um, have a dramatic negative impact on students. And as a school committee, we're responsible to provide a safe and healthy learning environment. And there was a I've been doing research on this for over a year. Um, School districts all over the country are banning this. Um, and it's primarily based on the health impact. And the other issue is the disturbances that are occurring in the schools and in the classrooms. We have parents calling their kids and texting their kids during class time. And so it one of the studies that I read said that it takes once a student gets a text or is disturbed in that manner, it takes them 20 minutes to refocus. Um, and then I don't think it's fair to the teachers to be disturbed when they're trying to teach a class. Um, one of the comments that or the Surgeon General of the United States in May of 23 made when a parent asked him, "Well, is social media safe for my kids?" He answered, "The answer is that we don't have enough evidence to say it's safe, and in fact, there is growing evidence that social media use is associated with harm to young people's mental health. Children are exposed to harmful content on social media, ranging from violent and sexual content to bullying and harassment. And for too many children, social media use is compromising their sleep and valuable in-person time with family and friends. We are in the middle of a national youth mental health crisis, and I am concerned that social media is an important driver of that crisis, one that we must urgently address." So we have to address it. There's, I look at if we don't do anything, then the school committee has not done their job uh, to protect the kids in school. Um, one of the other things in that, and that was May of 23 when the Surgeon General put that advisory out. And one of the most important things that I saw was, as part of that statement, he said, Children and adolescents don't have the luxury of waiting years until we know the full extent of social media, how social media affects them. So we have to do something. We know the science all points to horrendous impact on our kids. And so that policy that we drafted, um, the kids are in school for 6.5 hours a day. We want them not to be on their cell phones from the time they get there until the time they leave. Um, recently we had an issue in one of the bathrooms where some kids were taking TikTok videos in the bathroom, and it caused an uproar. Um, this policy basically says that the kids, if they have their phones, they have to be off and they have to be stowed away in their backpacks or out of view. And that will prevent a lot of the issues that have occurred. Um, the policies that we proposed in this draft are very minor changes compared to what the current policies are. So every school has a handbook, and then every handbook is reviewed every year, and it's approved by the school committee. In the current handbooks, every handbook talks about a cell phone policy and about consequences of behavior, and they're a little bit different for elementary versus high school. So our biggest issue with this policy is impact on the high school, because quite frankly, cell phone use in high school is out of control. And I just mentioned some of the TikTok things that had occurred in the bathrooms. So parents want their kids to have cell phones, and it's just the kids want to have the cell phones. But when you look at the bullying, the cyberbullying, all that stuff, it's all related to the cell phones. And the cell phones in our policy includes earbuds, I can't say Apple watches, but all electronic watches, anything that can communicate, music, text, all that. Because we need to stop the disturbances, and we need to let the teachers have the time to teach. And I think this policy will do that.
What about those who would say and sort of make the argument that no doubt all of that which you just stated is true and it would impact adults as well? I think that you could make a very strong argument that social media in general has, I mean, just look at the impact it's had on our political discourse and our business discourse even. But what about those who would say, well, the reality is the world has changed, and having access to social media, having access to the internet, and now certainly artificial intelligence, and being able to communicate in real time is an essential skill that the less access that people have to these technologies, the less prepared they'll be for industries of a contemporary and future nature. Is there a happy medium here, or is it impossible for that sort of selective enforcement and therefore a blanket ban on the devices is required?
So we're not telling kids and families that they can't use social media. All we're saying is we have 6.5 hours to teach our kids and to educate our kids. It's not a lot of time. And the cell phones and social media is a distraction. All we're saying is for 6.5 hours, 5 days a week, we don't want them used. That's pretty reasonable. Um, why would that 6.5 hours make a difference in impacting a kid's ability to learn how to use social media? Um, it it doesn't. Um,
Well, let's say a
there.
problem comes up that can be, the reality is that people use Chat GPT now to answer questions that then allows them to go deeper on the answer. So rather than spending time trying to ascertain an answer, they can get an answer and then go a step further with that answer.
So
That's in real time, not so much like, okay, later I'm going to use social media to figure this out, but you're working on a project. There's no question artificial intelligence is fundamental to where we're at right now and where we're going. So stripping students of that is setting them back.
So the taxpayers of Middletown spent millions of dollars to make sure that every kid has a computer in a classroom.
Got it.
So that's a non-issue with, you have to have the cell phone.
Yep.
It's just, it's not that argument goes away.
Hmm. That's huge. I mean, that changes the conversation completely. Yes. So if they have access to a computer, 100%, you still have access to the advanced technology. You just don't necessarily have access to TikTok in the middle of the day. Where this policy is right now, and in terms of implementation and frankly enforcement, what are the guidelines for educators right now and administrators effective today, so to speak? And then how does that change with the vote that took place on February 13th?
Okay. So today in the schools today, uh, the elementary and middle school, not so much of an issue. It's mainly the high school. But the policies that are in place today basically say kids can't use cell phones in class. So the problem is, so some teachers will look the other way and not address it, and other teachers, they had these places where every kid could put a cell phone when they came into the classroom. Well, one teacher may enforce it, the other teacher may not. And if you don't have consistency in the enforcement, it's not going to work. And you have to get the teachers to engage, to say, Johnny, you have your cell phone, go to the office, and let the front office deal with that part of it. The other part of it is the communication. So, I'm an old guy. I never had a cell phone when I was in school. If you have to get a message to your student, all you do is you call the office, and the office will make sure that that child gets that message. Now, do I want the office staff to become messengers for, oh, Johnny, I'm going to pick you up at uh, a different time? That's not an urgent or emergency communication. So, we need to make sure that the parents, the teachers, the staff, I mean, everybody needs to work together to make this happen. Um, but the biggest thing is the consistency in the enforcement. And that has not occurred in the past. And you hear some of these school districts have these pouches, yonder pouches.
Yep.
And one, they're very expensive. Two, if you use those yonder pouches, when the kids come into school, you're going to have teachers collecting phones, putting them in. Then at lunchtime, you have to undo it and then redo it after lunch. And then again, when you leave school. I don't want to pay teachers to be collecting cell phones. I want to pay teachers to teach. And so those yonder pouches, in my view, are just not useful for what we want to do. So that leaves you with either you got to get the cell phones have to be gone, or you're going to have an inconsistency enforcement action where it will never work. And so that's kind of where we are.
What's the
And you
union say? Pardon me, please.
go ahead.
Oh, what does the union say about enforcement here? Is this something that is union wide, there's support for, or is there concern that this may be an additional task or element of the job description that wasn't negotiated in the most recent contract?
So I don't think it's anything different than what's in the current contract. Um, it's a disciplinary issue. And all we're asking is that the teachers do it consistently. When they see it, address it, and we aren't asking the teachers to do the disciplinary part of it. All we're saying is the teachers, if they see it, they need to consistently across the board say, Johnny, you have your phone, go to the front office, let the front office deal with it. That's all we're asking. So that's not an issue, a union issue with the contract. In fact, when we had our a meeting on the 13th, school committee on the 13th, I had 3 or 4 teachers who sent emails and said they support the policy. I mean, the teachers are frustrated too. Um, I mean, they're trying to teach the kids, and for the most part, we have pretty good kids in our school district, and we're going to have a couple kids that may want to push the boundaries. And so, if it's done consistently and enforced consistently, that's going to go away pretty quickly.
Greg, thanks so much for your time today. An interesting story. It's a national conversation. Actually, it's a global conversation, and we'll see how it plays out in Middletown. Thanks.
All right, take care.